Oh.
You ready? Show 7 o'clock. We will call the regular meeting of the Planning Commission for Garfield Township to order. The first item on the agenda is the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, I see we have Ann back there. Ann, you want to take a roll for us?
Sure. Robertson.
Here.
Klein.
Here.
Augustinelli.
Here.
Fudge.
Here.
DeGood.
Here.
And McManus.
Here.
And it's noted that Racine is absent and excused.
And he may be a little late. He wasn't sure if he'd make it. So, first item on the agenda tonight is public comment. We have public comment at the beginning of and at the end of each meeting. I do not see any public hearings tonight. So, at this time, we'll open up our first public comment, excuse me. If you have anything you'd like to comment on, feel free to come forward, do that. Or if you'd like to choose and wait till the second public comment, that's fine too.
Good evening. For those people at home who don't know me, I'm Chris Barshoff. I'm the new manager at the township. I began on my time here at the township on Monday, and prior to being the new manager, I was a trustee for 4 years. I've worked with the Planning Commission at joint meetings in the past over 4 years, and I appreciate all the work that you guys do. Standing room only, it's a difficult job, and it's obvious with all the people here tonight. Congratulations to Trustee McManus, or Augustinelli, and Supervisor McManus on your guys' elections. And for the future, I don't intend on being at these meetings regularly, but I will be a resource when I'm needed to be here, or if I need to be part of conversations. I will certainly make myself available to be here and discuss things outside of here if need be. But I just want to say thank you for everything that you've done for me as a trustee, and I'm going to continue a good working relationship moving forward. So, thank you.
Chris? And congratulations on your new job, so. Well, I don't see anybody else beating a path to the microphone, so at this point, I'll go ahead and close the public comment, the first public comment, and move on to the review and approval of the agenda. And if any board members have any conflicts of interest, now would be the time to state those.
I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as presented.
Support.
Motion made and supported to approve the agenda as presented. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Excuse me, motion carried. Correspondence, John, I didn't see any correspondence.
There is no correspondence.
Okay. Reports, first of all,
Mr.
town
Chairman, you
board.
skipped the minutes.
Did I skip the minutes? I'm sorry. I'm getting ahead of myself.
Oh,
Minutes.
you're that bad.
Item number 3, the minutes. We do have a minutes from our October 23rd meeting in front of you. Does anybody have any comments or corrections or questions on those minutes?
Make a motion to approve the minutes as presented.
Motion made, motion made and supported to approve the minutes as presented. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. I gotta quit checking stuff off before we cover it. That's my problem. And correspondence. Now we're at the town, on reports, town board. Molly, any reports from the town board?
We have not had a meeting, but big election. I think it was run smoothly and good.
All right.
That's it.
Okay, planning commissioners, ZBA. Rob?
No meeting.
No meeting, Bob. Parks and Rec?
We have not had a meeting.
Okay, joint planning commission.
Nothing lately.
Nothing since our last meeting, all right. Staff reports.
Their monthly report is in your packet. If you got any questions, let us know. This is the same report that will be at the, supplied with the township board as well, which will be meeting next week.
Okay.
I don't have any other things, any other items to report at this time.
All right. All right, moving on, we've got item 6, unfinished business. Item A, Planning Department Report 2024-95, the Angel Care Child Care Church of the Living God Special Use Permit and Findings of Fact.
I'll provide a brief overview of this one. You've seen this at a couple meetings, introduced in September, and we had a public hearing last month at the October meeting. As proposed, there's the existing church building, Church of the Living God on Bermley Road. And the proposal is to do childcare as an additional use in the facility. I think when we've looked at it the first 2 times, there was a couple of questions, but I believe the applicant has been able to answer those in due course. So pretty much the only changes to, or the only additional thing in the report is to kind of put all together in the draft findings of fact, looking at the approval criteria for special use permits and the supplemental standards for childcare, and staff in looking at those and reviewing what we've discussed at the Planning Commission. It appears that they seem to meet all of those standards. So we have the draft findings, if there are any questions on that, and then the 2 draft motions, one on the findings and one on the actual application. So if commissioners have any questions, now would be the time.
Anybody have any questions for staff on findings? And if there are no questions, I'd entertain a motion.
I'll make a motion that the findings of fact for SUP 2024-03 as presented in Planning Department Report 2024-95 and being made part of this motion be adopted.
Support.
Motion made and supported to adopt the findings of fact for Planning Department report, or SUP 2024-03 in Planning Department Report 2024-95. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Take the next one.
I can. I'll make the motion then that application SUP 2024-03 submitted by Angel Care Childcare for a special use permit for a child care center at parcel 05-026-014-10 at 1514 Bermley Road be approved, subject to the following conditions, which are numbered 1 through 3 in Planning Department Report 2024-95.
Support.
Motion made and supported to approve the special use permit for, approve special use permit 2024-03 as part, and all conditions 1 through 3 as presented in Planning Department Report 2024-95. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Guys are all set. Okay. Item 6B is Tower North Wireless Communication Facility, special use permit action. So, anything on that one?
Yeah, so there actually is an update with this one. So the application was for a wireless communication tower on Zimmerman Road, on a parcel off of Zimmerman, a little bit north of Silver Lake Road. It was originally introduced in June and was tabled, and then at the subsequent meeting, remember the applicant team was here. One of the biggest questions was the ability to meet the location. The original proposed location was within the setbacks required for a cell tower. And so it was tabled at the July meeting to send it back to the applicant if they wanted to attempt to find a location either on that site or withdraw that application. We did receive there is just a sketch at this point, but a proposed location on the same site, but moving it further back into the site, so it's further separated from the neighboring parcels, the house that is on the property set further back from the road. They indicated that they don't yet have the full set of like updated drawings and analysis. They had a fairly large packet of supplemental material when they originally submitted, so I'm imagining they're updating all of that based on this location, but they at least provided that they're trying to work with the property owner to get it to this location. So staff wanted to indicate that, so they've been informed every time it's come to the Planning Commission that to make progress within 120 days, there's a provision in the ordinance, if they don't make substantial progress within 120 days, it automatically expires. The application would automatically expire. Tonight's meeting would have been the end of that 120 days. We considered that this provides indication that they are trying to work through getting the location, and they are working on formalizing these into a set of drawings. But since we don't have them, it would seem to be appropriate to continue to table the item until those drawings can come to the Planning Commission for review. So after all that, it's mostly to continue to table it, but just that from at least staff's review of it and what we've received from the applicant, that they are actually making progress. So application does not expire, but does not move any further forward at this point. And that's the update.
All right. Before we move on, does anybody have any questions for staff on this? We good?
Yes, I'm curious from a procedural standpoint, is it appropriate, I mean, this seems like progress to me, so I don't have any complaint, but as a formality, do we acknowledge as a planning commission that this represents progress? And, or do we just, in continuing to table it, does that accept staff's judgment that this is progress? And it continues to be tabled. And I'm just thinking of it relative to how do we go about in the future if we have somebody who doesn't do anything for 120 days? What's the policy procedure that designates somebody hasn't done anything and it was decided they hadn't done anything?
Yeah. I think there has been some in the past couple of years that did expire, and I think we did acknowledge that with a planning commission motion. Like it may have already reached the 120 days, like in the week before, but I believe planning commission, if I recall correctly, made a motion to consider the application to have expired. So yeah, I guess in this case, we could make a motion to consider it continued, or just accept that it's continuing. But yeah, it doesn't really lay out in that section a specific procedure for that, which might be a thing to address at some point. But that's a good question. I don't know, planning commissioners, what's your thoughts?
If we extend it, how long do we extend it for?
That's also a good question. So the actual language of the section, I'm just going to read it because it's put it in the report. During the course of any administrative, legislative, or quasi-judicial application review, if an applicant has failed to proceed meaningfully towards application completion or application decision for a period of 120 consecutive calendar days, then the application shall be considered expired. Following expiration of an application, the applicant shall be provided with written notice of said expiration. So it talks about just a period of 120 consecutive days. So in theory, it could reset.
Starts again.
Starts again.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, I'd be willing to make the motion that we keep this application tabled for, let's say, 60 days. If they come with more progress, we can continue from there if the rest of the planning commission thinks that's appropriate.
Did they give you any
You making that
indication when
motion?
they have the rest of the information to you?
When I talked with them, they were working on it, and they need to send people up here. I think some of the applicant team is not local, so they were sending people up here They indicated they were trying to work on it over the next few weeks, and I let them know the next meeting is second Wednesday of December. So they know when that meeting is. I think they were going to attempt to get those in time for that meeting. Don't know specifically, though.
Now, if they fail to do, there's a difference between no action at all and failing to, at some point, the application would expire if they didn't complete the project, right?
Correct, yeah.
So there's kind of two different, if we could keep, they could make progress, and we could continue it for another 120 days, then they could make more progress, but at the end of the 2 years, probably, isn't it? Or a year?
I think that is after an approval, if they don't
If they don't
actually
approve.
start the
Okay,
project.
yeah. So,
Yeah.
I'm in agreement. I think this is a big step. This is a much improved location than what we talked about earlier, so
All right.
I don't know if I think by continuing to table it, if staff, if it's an administrative review, staff says there's progress, probably resets the 120 days, I'm kind of guessing.
And also, like, it seems that this is, like, one of the big stumbling blocks was the location.
Yeah.
Like, progress in the next 120 days would be actually get us a site plan set. Like, if they just keep moving the location around, that's not progress at that point. Like, that is, you're just moving the location around. But this addresses the concerns that were brought up the first time with regards to location.
I mean, I don't think it's inappropriate to make a motion to continue the table. I don't think that's inappropriate,
Sure, I'll make the motion that we continue to table it, and staff is going to determine whether there's progress being made.
Perfect.
Support?
Okay.
Motion made and supported to continue the table of the Tower North Wireless Communication Facility.
For any length of time or just forever?
You want 120 days, or you want 60 days?
They've made progress, so we can, I think it's
You want to
based
start
on
the
our
clock
ordinance.
again?
I think that's appropriate, 120 days.
120?
Yeah,
Okay.
Make it,
I think that's what would happen just by the fact if we determine there's progress, then the 120 days resets, so.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing
If I
none,
understand the motion,
I'll just table
we're
it.
we're going
tabling
to
it,
table it for 120.
but they've got another 120 days in which to do something, or else it expires.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because we're recognizing this as progress.
Yeah.
Within the- Yeah.
With that.
Okay.
Any further discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
So-
Item 6C, Planning Department Report 2024-97, K1 Speed, High Tops, Site Plan Review Amendment Update. Staff, sounds like you have an update on this proposal?
Yeah, so just to give some history, we received an application for the High Tops Bar, Restaurant, Nightclub. Back at the end of August, it was on the September 11th, 2024 Planning Commission agenda. At that point, the application was tabled as the Planning Commission requested more information. There were some concerns on the proposed use in terms of meeting some of the site plan standards, and particularly the location of it with neighboring residential uses in the area. So it was tabled back on September 11th, then on October 9th. It was on the agenda, and the applicant made a request that it be removed from the agenda at that time. There was still, at that meeting, though not a public hearing, though there was public comment that was made, considerable public comment that was made at the October 9th meeting. Since then, I've had one conversation with the applicant. He's requested that it be, would like to remain tabled. He has no new information on that specific location. He did mention that he is evaluating the project and is looking at alternate locations. I did tell him that if he is looking for an alternate location, he can't have two applications at the same time, so this would have to be withdrawn, and a new application would have to be provided to the township. So, other than that, did not give me any other information. Did indicate that at some point that he was looking at maybe downsizing the project a little bit, but nothing of concrete. So at this point, we still have those unresolved issues, have never been addressed by the applicant for this location. So we're recommending that just to continue to honor the request of the applicant, However, I would say that if you did want to take action, it would, I don't necessarily have the information in front of me to provide for you, but certainly it appears that the application as presented doesn't meet the site plan criteria.
But it could be revised to meet the site plan criteria.
Exactly, yeah.
But they have 120, to revisit the 120 days,
Yeah.
they have 120 days to do that, which would be they have to show meaningful progress before our December meeting or thereabouts, right?
It was tabled in September,
Yeah.
so this would be about 60 right now. So
Yeah.
it's January, I think.
Probably your
Actually.
January
that's-
meeting.
Yeah, my math
Yeah.
was off. There's 4 months
Mhm.
in 120.
But you're correct, if we don't receive anything, then at that point, the application would expire.
Would you give them some kind of notice, perhaps in December, that if they haven't done something prior to our
Yeah.
January meeting, certain consequences might happen?
Yeah, I mean, I think we, just as with Tower North, the previous application, we contact them on a monthly basis, say, hey, where are you at on this? You know, just to make them aware of the time constraints on these types of applications if they're not acted upon.
If this application expires and he wants to move to a different location, the location of this application, he cannot apply for another year, but can he switch to a different address and apply immediately if this one expires?
I believe that would only be in the case of a denial. I don't
Okay.
know if it just expires,
Expired?
I think he could still apply,
At a different location?
or even at this location. I think what the 1-year restriction is if the planning commission took action to deny it, then it can't go back to that same location for 1 year to make.
So why are we
application.
so worried, like the Tower North deal?
Wow.
Why did we care about it that much? If that expired, they would just apply again.
That's correct, they could have,
So that's no big,
yeah.
okay.
It's just, what it's trying to do is just to make sure that there's some action on it, so it's just not sitting out there,
Okay.
and it's just putting a time limitation to it.
And I suppose the penalty to the applicant would be they'd have to pay a new fee, which would
Correct.
have a cost associated
Yeah.
with it.
So at the applicant's request, we're tabling this, basically removing it from the agenda tonight and not taking any action then.
Correct.
All right, we'll move on then. New business, Planning Department Report 2024-98, Cherryland Center Comprehensive Development Plan, Site Plan Review. So who's going to take this one?
That'll be me. So you received last month an opportunity to review the kind of a conceptual review of the comprehensive development plan. So the applicant has made considerable changes to it in terms of meeting some of the requirements that the Planning Commission wanted, and as well as staff. And so they've provided a updated comprehensive development plan for the Cherryland Center. So that's in your packet. We have provided our review in terms of how it meets some of the standards in the ordinance. There are some general site development requirements that we've reviewed it in terms of Article 4 and Article 5. And there's also some standards specifically to plan shopping center districts. And so those have also been addressed in our review. In terms of the actual plan sheets, there's an existing site conditions and utilities that are shown in there, as well as existing parking and pedestrian circulation plan. And then those are the first three, and then the 4, 5, 6, and 7 are more about kind of future, including some of the phased-in types of uses that are planned, or at least initially proposed for that. When we looked at the plans in terms of meeting some of the criteria, I think for the most part, it met a lot of those requirements. There were some outstanding items that we feel are still important to be addressed or be conditions of the comprehensive development plan. There's, I think, when we look at the entire site there, it's, what we're trying to do is create a baseline for it as current conditions on the site, so that as different proposals are proposed on that site, there's a way to evaluate them. So I did receive contact from the applicant in terms of the process on a couple of things we talked about. One, in our review, we talk about the reciprocal easement agreement. So this was the agreement that was initially started back in when it used to be mainly owned by Showstack, and then Sears was on the site. So it was between those two parties, but it pretty much covered the most of the site. And that dealt with things such as parking, stormwater management, et cetera. So one of the things that we've been trying to encourage is that that be updated, or at least ensure that if it's in the current easement agreement, that it addresses some of the concerns that we have related to cross-access drives and so forth, stormwater management, parking, signage, that type of thing. So in talking with the applicant, he indicated that the three main property owners are talking about that at this time. We haven't seen anything, but there is movement on there. So that is, that's a good sign. It's something that we want to see, ultimately something in place. And like I said, it could either be the current agreement. We just want to make sure that it's pointed out that addresses those items to ensure that there is smooth and coordinated development of this site. The other concern that the applicant brought up was related to actually a use, the Dog Park Cafe, which was a conceptual review that you saw back in June. And they were questioning why that wasn't placed on this agenda. And our concern and this is really maybe a decision ultimately up by the Planning Commission, but that we thought that it would be more appropriate to have this comprehensive development plan completely done before considering any types of other new uses. I know they do show it on these sheets in terms of the kind of the future proposals, but that's something that we felt that it was important to keep those kind of separated. One of the issues, I think, and then I'll kind of allow you guys to discuss this, but one of the issues, I think, is related to the parking on the site. So the applicant did prepare, as part of their site plans here, there's really a couple different ways that the parking is calculated. So there's an existing count on the site of 1,437 parking spaces. And there's really kind of really three different ways that you can kind of look at the parking. One of the ways is to actually divide up all the different uses that are on the site and calculate out what the minimum and maximum requirements are for parking. And that's it's an easy way to kind of quantify that based on the uses, but it's going to get really complicated. And it might create some situations where there's a lot more parking needed than would actually be needed by the uses based on those calculations. So it really probably wouldn't allow for any infill or alternate development. We do have shared parking standards, which they also did calculate out. And in that case, that does give you some greater flexibility, understanding that some uses need greater parking demand in the daytime versus the evening. And then there's another way of calculating it out, and that is there is a parking calculation for a planned shopping center area, which is a number based on square footage. That is another way to calculate that out. So that's something that gives you kind of a range to do those. I think it's going to be very difficult if we always calculate it by the individual uses within the buildings. I think that's going to probably create a demand for more parking than is actually needed. So that may be something that you want to talk about, what you might feel comfortable within that, because it's important, particularly when we look at infill development that may take out some what might be seen as surplus parking. When you're out there right now on the site, you do see a lot of extra parking. It's not filled, but as new uses come into those buildings and as new buildings come onto that site, will impact the availability of parking at some point. So it's important to try to find that balance. So that's all I have at this point.
Anybody have any questions for staff?
So as I understand, what staff's recommending is that we table this until we get some more information as provided in your draft motion.
Well, the only thing I was trying to refer to was the reciprocal easement agreement, which I have heard, at least from the applicant, that there is some headway being made on there. But the other one was the parking calculation so that we can have a clear baseline on that. And that could potentially be a condition as well. I guess it depends on how you want to look at this.
Okay. I see the applicant.
Yeah, Bob Verche with Gosling Zubak here for Holiday Park Realty, the applicant. So yeah, just here to answer questions and clarify where I can, but I guess along the parking line discussion, I guess we were trying to present the tools that John and Steve need, I think, going forward to assess any future uses that come or proposals such as what's reflected in the future phase plans that are part of the package. So I think everything's there. It's kind of like there's A, B, or C way to look at the parking, and we're showing that there's excess parking in the future phases, even with more uses being added, and if they add other buildings or whatnot, infill it, that we can still meet the parking requirements. So that's the intent of what these parking tables are to represent, so.
Okay.
And I guess, yeah, we would, I mean, hope that anything could be conditioned to move the process along instead of tabling it tonight.
I guess for one, it's a complicated process. It sounds like your client is ready to rock and roll now, but there's two other owners. And I think we need their involvement in terms of what is going to be happening with respect to stormwater, parking, signage, all those other things. And on the one hand, I can sympathize if you can't get the other owners to move. It's too bad if you're being held back. But on the other hand, if we approve some sort of a plan that you're proposing on behalf of your client, it's going to have major impacts on these other folks that aren't in front of us, the other owners.
Well, there's also, as John mentioned, the existing agreement that everybody is party to already. We're, Holiday Park is in discussions with the other owners. I thought somebody from the curling club would be here tonight as well. Oh, Kevin's here. Sorry. Yeah. So we've been talking to them. We've been working with them. It's not that they're not involved. So, sorry, I looked right past you, Kevin. I'm sorry.
I guess one comment that I wanted to direct to staff, I guess, is in the report, I think it's on page 4, it talks about the proposed comprehensive plan updates the overall plan and it's reflective of changes since '98. I, for one, it would be very helpful if somebody would point out to me what is proposed now compared to what was in effect in 1998. What are the changes? What's new? What's different? What's added? What's removed? I don't feel like I know that at
Well,
this point.
yeah, I guess we were looking at it because, so if you look at, it's mostly just been the outlot development. So it's been the redevelopment of the Burger King, the Big B Coffee and the Big B Coffee is new construction. The Seven Brew was repurposed of a relocation of what was originally a bank and then the hometown pharmacy. The Wendy's is new, as well as the fourplex with the Starbucks in it. So it's really the perimeter type of stuff in terms of form that's been changed out there. And we can share that certainly that 1998. But I was thinking what we're trying to do here, since those already kind of went through their individual site plan review, and then some of the reviews of the actual main building itself, that this would kind of create a new baseline. So as it is today, it operates fine, meets all of our requirements. This just then gives us some mechanism to evaluate any alterations out there, including additional new uses within the existing building, as well as, more importantly, what we've been trying to stress is we want to have this baseline so that if there is any infill, whether it's an expansion or addition to the existing building, or let's say siting something out in the middle of a parking lot, that we have some way. So that's why this to us kind of creates that new baseline.
So that's with regard to parking, it creates a new baseline to say, this is the number of parking spaces that are here, and there's an agreed understanding that so much parking needs to be provided as certain portions of this are developed or redeveloped, and that's going to limit the uses that, it could limit the uses that are gonna be viable.
Right. I mean, that's what we were trying to get, is just kind of an overall, this is the baseline of, and that's not just the parking, but it's the layouts in terms of sidewalks and so forth that are out there, islands versus striped islands, or, actually formerly landscaped islands versus striped ones, and everything of that nature, so that we have some way to evaluate what any type of the proposals are. So it's essentially this, we kind of look at this as like a plan unit development, but it's not. That overall plan is kind of this regulating plan that kind of shows us the form that's out there currently, and then so we can evaluate proposals and see how they reflect in the ordinance and meet ordinance requirements.
And so the deficiency, as you see it relative to the comprehensive parking plan, is that this appears to calculate, it does several different calculations for an assumed full build-out, but it's not providing an accounting of the unused spaces within the entire facility right now.
Well, yeah, I mean, we can calculate that out. I just wanted to make sure that that this would be approved without some of the things that haven't been approved yet. For instance, on this table on sheet 3, where it says existing parking distribution, if you look down kind of on the table there where it's 1212 West South Airport Road, which is K1 speed, you have that identified, and then right below that is it says vacant, but it also listed as high tops. Or doesn't list it as high tops, so it listed as entertainment. And you'll see that there's a huge parking demand right there in terms of the minimum and the maximum.
So that would
That kind of skews it right now.
It would appropriately be shown as excess parking for the entire facility and an unused portion of the facility.
Yeah,
The same would apply to Two Brothers Dog Park, and then their use of parking would be associated with their actual applications, and then we would, or staff would, review those applications against the comprehensive parking plan.
yeah.
Okay. So it's really as I think as you said, it's just a rejiggering of information, but in general, staff is recognizing that there's enough parking for what's there and enough parking for future redevelopment within the context of this plan, right?
Right.
Okay. And then what are the deficiencies with regard to, you're looking for an updated reciprocal easement agreement addressing cross-sections, drives, et cetera, and I see there are a lot of easements already here. What are the deficiencies that are lacking in the current easements? And because I know writing easements, agreeing to easements can take a long time.
Yeah.
And is there a set of conditions that we could identify that these easements need to satisfy? And then those easements just need to be prepared and agreed to? Meaning, can we lay out the requirements of the easements, that they need to come back then and say, bring them to staff as a condition? Or are those easements that this planning commission needs to review in some detail?
So this is, one of the things when, these are, let me back up, but this easement, a reciprocal easement agreement, it does not involve the township. It's between the private parties. But we do have things like in our ordinance where we require easement agreements for private roads, for instance, and maintenance agreements that go with that, to ensure that there's proper, safe access to properties for fire emergencies and so forth. So in this case, it's a little bit different. We don't necessarily need to have dedicated easement descriptions for that, because this is kind of the remnants of a shopping center, and the form is really kind of staying the same. Now, that could change if ownership changes on there, and there could be some maybe disagreement to that easement agreement in some form. But I think the way they listed it out here, and we wanted to ensure that there's some dedicated areas that are ensure that this is going to be maintained as a drive, or essentially kind of like a private road, even though it's not a private road. Because that way we can, when there's something that comes in, like some type of infill, we want to make sure that there's access through that area, whether it's a fire lane or some type of easement or something of that nature. That those are areas that we want to make sure make sense from a flow standpoint through the whole site. And those can be altered. They don't have to remain exactly where they are at today. They can be adjusted, but we want to ensure that there's something there that indicates where we can anticipate that there can be access to different parts of the site, so it works and flows together.
And then that they're not proposing to build or put a parking lot across something that's supposed to be an easement to circulate.
Correct, yeah. I mean, right now, it works out fairly well. I mean, the owners are getting along and all that, but we're just trying to put something in place that, should that all change, that there's something in there that kind of gives some guidance to that, so we can evaluate proposals as they come in.
There's obviously an easement or an agreement in place now, right? So we're just trying to get that updated and improved. And I think I brought this up before, but we're talking about the main owners, but is the Jimmy John's owner involved in this at all?
So that parcel was created, half of that was.
Well, and the reason I asked, John, is because half of Jimmy John's parking is in this PUD. You can see inside the blue line that all that parking is being utilized for Jimmy John's, but it's part of this, do they have an agreement with these owners to use that parking? Was that parking, another question would be, was that parking that Jimmy John's is using a condition of their approval at one point in time? Was it necessary? Because, we're kind of, overlooking that. It's another owner. I think it was originally part of this PUD. It was part of this piece of property Planned Shopping Center.
And shopping center, yeah.
Planned Shopping Center. It was part of this, that property was part of the property that is what is Cherryland Center. Is that an owner that needs to be considered or included in that agreement for cross easement? I think they do. Because what's stopping from the new owners shutting that off and not letting them use that parking?
Right. So the history on that one is it used to be kind of two parcels there.
Okay.
So, and on the corner was a house, and that was removed, and then it was kind of combined, those two parcels, and it created the current configuration that as you see today.
There was a video rental place at one point.
Right. Family Video came in there and created this one larger parcel. So I would assume that part of it, and that's why kind of essentially the Qdoba parking lot is actually owned by Dr. Wall's property, and it's covered that. But I would agree they need to have, they should at least be, and I don't know what, if there was any type of an agreement between Sears and Family Video that was established when that was done, or it was just done and just assumed there was the ability to cross-access through that area. It seems that it would make sense, like you said, to have them be a party to it.
I think they should be considered or approached either way, because if they got shut off, they'd only have one ingress, one egress, and I'm not sure they'd have enough parking for their business, so might be something you might want to pursue or check into.
Well, we can, reach out to them and, try to pursue them, but I guess physically shutting them off was gonna require alterations to the site that is gonna be, violate the plan, and so, I mean, there's gonna be ways for you guys to enforce it in that manner.
Today, I think you're right, you're probably right, but, like I say, what it is today doesn't necessarily what it's gonna be tomorrow, and we've talked specifically about three owners all along, and there's a fourth owner there that I think needs to be at least included in the document. Okay, so whether they.
Well, I mean, they're.
It's all a win
reflected
for
on
them,
the
there's no
plan.
loss, they wouldn't be giving anything up, they just need to be included, so, if somebody's coming out of the Cherryland Center, they could cut through that parking lot too to get to that street, and maybe they live down there, so I think it's beneficial for everybody to include them. I think they've been forgotten about, and I think they need to be included, and so, at least named in the agreement, so.
Joe. So when you're figuring calculations on these parking spaces, are you suggesting we consider those parking spaces also that are around Jimmy John's and what used to be Family Video as part of this whole piece? At one time, it was all part of one piece, but are we looking at the scope big enough for all of it or not? I mean, traditionally, we think about Cherryland Center as, that part we see with the parking lot and those big buildings, but is it this whole site? Would we need to calculate those as well?
Well, I think if they have some agreement with them, I think it would make sense. I mean, from a layout and flow, certainly. I mean, I don't think anybody knows any difference whether they're, on the old Family Video site or in the Cherryland site. It's all pretty much kind of flows to the same. So it seems like it should be part to that. I think it's off to the side a little bit too. I don't think there's gonna be, I think the parking that's there is really kind of serving that primarily that use. You could have some that may overflow, let's say from whatever happens at the back end of the old Sears or something like that, depending on what that is, but.
John, I'm respectful of the question and the concern, but I'm wondering if the Jimmy John's site has sufficient parking. So I guess what I'm getting at, Joe, is if something were to change and there was a limited access or access is eliminated from the Jimmy John's site, does Jimmy John's have adequate parking within its own boundaries to meet its use requirement, such that even though there is that overflow parking on what was the Sears, that it's really a non-issue because they don't need that parking in order to maintain the viability of their site? It would be another thing if they needed that parking, and that otherwise they would be in violation of their parking requirements.
Well, they're obviously using parking and they're not part of the parking calculation, so I think they just need to be included. I
Sure.
think they need to be named in the easement and included. Let's say somebody goes to K1 and they live right on the street behind here, they just cut through Jimmy John's and get home without having to go out on South Airport Road. Be much safer transit for them. So there would be a cross easement needed, otherwise,
Unless there is one already, right?
maybe, that's what I'm saying. I don't know if there is or not, but they've never been mentioned as an owner even of the parcel, so I'm guessing they're probably not part of a cross easement. And I'm just saying, there is clearly already cross easement now, parking and driveway, so let's include them in whatever agreement they come forward and say, hey, we have this in place, let's include that additional owner in it, that's all. So, I'm not trying to complicate it, I think it's just necessary.
We can figure out what those calculations are and see how it meshes with what's already been provided. The other one, actually, I thought of, so the other outlots, when you look at like the coffee shops and Burger King and Wendy's and so forth, are all been calculated as individual sites, so they're not, why there's access connected to those areas with their parking has all been provided on site. The only one I have never really checked, because we haven't had anything happening there, is at Margarita's Grill, because that's a sizable restaurant space. It's a sizable building. I think that might be something that we also look, just to see where that stands. But I'm not, the Wendy's, the fourplex and so forth, those have all been calculated and they meet their requirements.
Go ahead.
I guess, John, I have a question for staff. I mean, I tried to be diligent and read the packet for these meetings, and the draft recommended motion was that this be tabled. I'm getting the sense that the applicant's hoping we're not gonna table it, we're gonna do something. What is staff recommending at this point?
Well, I guess what we were trying to do was get some feedback on this reciprocal easement agreement and see where that's at, because I want to make sure that that's probably the most important thing. I think the parking calculations we can adjust, so I would like to see something, some evidence of what work is on that easement agreement and making it sure that it's addressed, and see who is going to be, to making sure that all the parties that are needing to be part of that agreement. So at this point, I don't know where you guys stand on that agreement, but that's something that I think we need to see some evidence of it and how it addresses some of these concerns. I mean,
Well,
otherwise we could put it as a condition of approval, and then where are we at? I mean, so that's.
I mean, a condition is acceptable. I mean, we have Kevin from the curling club's here, Steve from Holly Park is here. They've talked in the past weeks. I know there's a meeting scheduled between all three of the owners for Friday, hopefully, depending on Dr. Wall's schedule, but, so there's movement. I mean, we can provide evidence of it going forward. That's not a problem.
Well,
I mean,
there's,
the parking can be updated tomorrow.
right. I guess that's just been my main concern on that, is to ensure that there's some movement on that. So if you're comfortable with that, I'm comfortable with, but I kind of like to see something a little bit more concrete. Because like I said, even if it's within the existing agreement, just show me where in the agreement that it's addressed. So, or if it's an amendment to it, it doesn't necessarily have to be something completely rewritten. But I prefer to see something in place.
I mean, we can amend the existing agreement with the current stormwater maintenance agreement that's typically in place with new developments. I mean, we can, Steve's attorney can review that, and, we can provide items going forward. We just, tabling it kind of just puts it on hold for unnecessary reasons, in our opinion.
I'm struggling, because I'm just trying to understand, so you haven't, it's not that there's a definition of what these easement agreements or an understanding or anything. Right now, as reviewing this, you don't have anything to review relative to the request for reciprocal easement agreements addressing concerns. Is that my understanding?
There's the current one that's in place from 1983, but that's the only one. And they are all still bound by that, but there are some things in there that,
And you've identified deficiencies and told all the owners that they need to revise this
yeah.
to address those deficiencies. And, you know, up until now, at this point, as staff, you don't have anything in hand to say, okay, they're gonna revise the easements. There's textual revisions, lawyers gotta do their thing, everybody's gotta review it. But when it's all said and done, these easements are, you as a staff and we as a planning commission understand that these easements are gonna address these concerns. So right now, there's nothing to review, not even a commitment to satisfy some requirements. So I guess I'm like, I'm trying to find some space to, you know, recommend, or go with some approval, but if you don't have anything where then we're just like, we would be starting from ground zero and saying, okay, prepare these easements and they gotta meet these conditions, when there's been time within this process. There was a preliminary, review that we did, right, several months ago?
Last month, on this was last month, the
Last month.
conceptual review, yeah.
Separate review. So, I don't know, I'm struggling trying to find what conditions we have, or what we were expecting, what you were expecting to have to review.
The thing with, if it was, so let's look at both scenarios. If it was approved today, and that would be a condition of approval, which I'll be honest with you, initially, I thought that could possibly work. The only thing is I think it's appropriate for the planning commission to see that, to get some confidence in understanding the relationship of this project in terms of what those agreement requirements are. So we could do that, but, tonight, but then it would be up to staff to review that. We could bring it back. That could be a condition that we bring it back to the planning commission. Or the other option would be to table it, but I think it kind of effectively does the same thing. Because I think it's important that the planning commission have some review of that, to have some understanding of this, to make sure that it's something that's going to be acceptable for. Because I'm just concerned about how this goes forward in terms of the development of the site. And you could still entrust us to do that, and we could just provide it to you as information, if that works as well.
I'm troubled by that idea. I mean, I'm not trying to delay somebody's approval, but I think, I shouldn't speak for anybody else, but we came into this expecting that we're probably gonna be tabling this, getting some more information, and then acting. And I'm not personally comfortable acting and then just giving somebody a condition that they gotta approve. I'd like to look at that. I don't feel ready to just say, this is wonderful, let's do it.
Have we received anything new since the last meeting? 'Cause we had a lot of these same discussions a month ago about this.
You received a whole new packet of
Yeah, plans
and
Right, but I
information,
mean, as
so.
far as the easement goes, as far as the cross easement agreement, has there been anything, because that was discussed.
No, we haven't.
When we walked out of here last month, we had 3 or 4 items to address in the plan. We did that. John followed up with an email laying them out for me. He also said that movement on the easement agreement is needed, as that will be a condition of the site plan approval. Okay, I can provide you the email if you'd like. When we started this process, we were always under the, it was always expressed that it could be a condition. The easements and the legal stuff could be a condition, okay? And now we're going down this road. Nobody's ever expressed what the criteria that it's gonna be judged on is. There's certain things in the ordinance that apply to other things that don't apply here. There's never been a detailed, itemized list of it should address these points. We know we want stormwater, we know we want access. There's an agreement in place that addresses the majority of those items. We can deal with the other ones. I think we're making a bigger mountain out of a molehill and opening a bigger can of worms the farther we get into this.
That could be true, except for we've really made significant changes to the site outside of the building footprint, the outlots, and some of the proposals then turn around and also expand outside the building footprint. So anything that we do outside the building footprint has the potential of affecting the easements and the flow of traffic and those other things. So I think they do need to be addressed. I don't think, an agreement that was in place before all these changes we've already done or are going to do even applies. We don't know. I haven't seen it. I don't know what it looks like. So I do trust staff in what they're saying as far as what we need to move forward with this. We've made some significant changes to this site. We've added at least 3 outbuildings, and the proposal that's on the table, I think now expands into the parking area and takes away significant parking. So
why didn't we, talk about that
I think we
when
did,
previous
but,
applications were made?
So what's the timeline looking like if we bring this back in December and they have the information they need? Will we act on it then, and then they can,
So,
what's the timeline looking like, I guess?
so right now, we're still accepting applications for the Cherryland Center if it's internal. So for instance, you have another application on your agenda later tonight for 24/7 golf, because that is internal to the building. So we're using that current form, we're not changing anything there, and that's acceptable. We wanted this in place before we did anything, whether it's an addition to the building or some type of infill development on the site. We want to make sure that this is in place to give that baseline for it. So at this point, that's what this would be needed for. So if you did it as a condition of approval or whatever, it'd still have to be met before they could do any other expansion on that site, whether it's an addition to the building or an infill.
We don't want to be writing your agreements. Do they have a good idea of exactly what information we're looking for, so that we want the stormwater agreement, we want the easements to be able to go up and down the rows and do all of those kinds of things that would normally be happening on a site? What other things do we want from them?
So there's the cross-access, there's the drives, stormwater, parking areas, signage agreements, lighting, just trying to, there was a list of items that are provided actually when we had our meeting regarding this last year. So those were outlined to them, and those were some of the things to be addressed.
So you have them.
Yeah.
Yeah, we do have the list, I guess. When I was referring to, I guess there's not a benchmark as to what's acceptable or not.
I don't think we don't have, we're not looking for anything that has to be exceptional. I think we just wanted to making sure that there's something in place, and we want to make sure that the appropriate owners are party to that.
Okay, so it might be simpler than what you think.
It could be, yeah. Probably will be.
You're having communication with these guys.
Oh, yeah.
Like when I look at it, I would think it would be like cross-access easement agreement addressing like the 4 things that are listed: cross-access and drives to ensure that all parcels can be accessed throughout the site, and 2, the entrances the existing entrances on Garfield Avenue and South Airport Road, stormwater management so that the stormwater system serving the entire development is maintained and all parcels have access, or which have connection to it, have access to that maintenance and connection to that stormwater area, parking area. If they cross boundaries or are shared, that there's an agreement that they can share them. And signage is the same thing. If there's going to be signage, that it is, all of them are party to it, and it's divided however that is. So like, at least when I look at it, that's what I see as like the parameters for what we would expect.
So that's the language that we're going to need to see. I mean,
Yeah, something to just address that. I mean, we don't have any way of determining to what extent, but it doesn't have to be really sophisticated. It's just something that kind of points to that, shows that there's something in place. So it's kind of, what Steve just mentioned is kind of, if you look at the bottom of page 6 of 9 of the report, it talks about that. The cross-access and drive, stormwater management, parking areas, and signage. And the reason why we're looking for that.
and we want everybody to sign it.
Well, how they determine their agreements and arrangements, we just want something that's applied to this. Yes.
We'll provide copies of whatever agreement comes out of it.
If the applicant wants to speak, you need to go to the microphone and state your name. Go ahead. Yeah.
This is Eric. You've heard him before. He's part of the, I guess, the two brothers, it's related to this application.
Hi everyone, sorry I ditched that habit from school. My name's Eric Engel. I live at 1412 Northwest Silver Lake Road, and I am one of the proud founders of Two Brothers Dog Park Bar and Cafe. And I'm really touched to see we have a handful of people here today, some people of the proud Traverse City dog community here, who are here to support this concept and have been patiently waiting with us to get this underway. So I want to give you a little bit of context, as I shared last time as well, but expand on it so you have that context as you're making these decisions. We submitted our first conceptual review in May of 2024. We submitted our full plan review in June of 2024. We've been working diligently with John and Steve for years now on the very early beginning of this concept. Okay? When we started looking at the Cherryland Center, we're accepting the risk of building out in Yonkers and being the first one to revitalize this space for the community. And we're using our own life savings to build this community space for the dog parents in Traverse City and for the dogs that are our family members. One thing that has been difficult throughout this journey is that we feel like we have been burdened with these requirements of parking, which we agree with, as well as these reciprocal agreements. And at the same time, to Bob's earlier point, this committee has approved changes through 7 Brew Corporation, Big B, Starbucks, in which those developments have utilized 6 times more parking than our proposal would utilize, and also changed the flow of traffic and created requirements for these easements. So I agree with Bob in regards to, I understand that a line in the sand needs to be drawn, but at the same time, you have a small local business trying to start up and has been working diligently with the township for 6 months to build this comprehensive plan. My greatest concern is that we have members who are excited for the space. We have employees lined up for next year. We have construction and architecture complete, and we're ready for a site review, and have been pleading for a site review for 6 months. My ask of this committee is that I agree reciprocal agreements need to be in place, but at the same time, I don't think we should have an extra burden that has not been placed on these large corporations coming in here. So my ask for this committee is to understand that these reciprocal agreements, when attorneys are involved, take a considerable amount of time, and to not delay our construction or our site review with this group for that considerable amount of time, which will be in negotiations with attorneys. So I understand the gap, but I ask for some grace to support this local business, and the same grace that you guys provided those larger corporations coming in. If you guys are not, if you don't agree with that approach, I also recommend to this group that you apply equal pressure to each owner. Throughout this process, the entire burden has been placed on Cherryland LLC with this new requirement. At the same time, every other development, which has been phenomenal for this space and is improving the space for this community, it's the right thing to do, they have not been burdened with these requirements. So it's an uphill battle for this one owner to get these agreements in place. So if you're not willing to allow us through without these reciprocal agreements and that risk, my ask for this committee is please put the same pressure on all the owners and stop all construction until they get those agreements in place so that we're not singled out. Thank you.
John?
Could I respond to that? Just so we
Absolutely.
know, we had a meeting in this room back in summer of 2023 that outlined this requirement that if there was going to be any infill development on the site or expansion of the footprint of the existing building, that the township would require, as it's allowed for in the CP district, to have an update of the comprehensive development plan. We made that very clear to the three main party owners of that, because we know that once you start going down that path of expanding, putting an addition or infilling some of the development, that it's going to start impacting the other parts of that site. So we had to draw a line at some point to say, okay, that's when we were going to do it, is when anytime there would be any project. So we've allowed for continuation of proposals that are on the interior of the building, and because that's not changing the form of the site. And we believe that the site can adequately support those. It's when we start doing any addition or infill on the site that we wanted to make sure that we could evaluate it in some form. So we made that really clear back in summer of last year. And so what we've been trying to do is to ensure that there's something in place, and I think we're almost there with the plans that have been developed by Gosling. So that's where we've been. And so I know that, we've been talking with Eric not long before this site was even identified on other sites throughout the township, and I know it's difficult to find locations. And so they've landed on this one, but this was the message that we made clear to the owners back then, that this is something that we would require. So.
Anybody else have any?
A quick response, John. So I agree with you very much, and you were clear with us. And that is why we went above and beyond to bring all the owners together, even though we're just a tenant, to bring all the owners together to get this plan in place that hasn't existed for 20 years. So I agree with you, and I agree with the requirement. My ask is some appreciation of this committee, of that work going on, and some leniency to how do we balance to get those in place, but also not delay us for another 6 months.
How quickly can you have the requirements back? Could you have those back for the December meeting?
As far as, I mean,
The-
parking can be updated tomorrow.
The
but-
cross easement stuff we just talked about earlier when
I mean, if I could predict how quickly we could get turnaround for attorneys,
See, 'cause-
I'd be a different.
I mean,
But
'cause
well,
like-
I mean, I think we can get some movement. I mean, Steve's here today. He'll be in town tomorrow. I mean, he can.
I think if we got something that was of some, even if it was in a draft form, and knowing that it could be executed, I think would probably work. I think we just want to see what the content of that is. I would think that by the December meeting, we should be able to have something in place. I don't think, it's not like they're starting from scratch. We're just looking to have something that is more reflective of the current site conditions and so forth. So it's not, I mean, they technically already have that agreement in place to some extent.
Can we have it reviewed and maybe draft changes by a couple weeks?
I see no problems getting Chris involved. He's a hard guy to work with.
We'll have something by then.
Chris, did you have a comment or question?
I guess a question. So want to make sure, are we looking for a draft amendment to all these easements? Or are we looking for some document that says, this is what all the current easements provide for, these are the deficiencies, and we're going to provide for that, and then in the revised easements, which everybody has to agree to, I'm just wondering, I mean, again, I think the applicant has said, boy, getting lawyers to write all this stuff and present us with a draft may take a long time. And do we need the draft legal document, or do we just need a report that says, these are the deficiencies the easements have, and a condition of this approval is that new easements will be put in place that address these deficiencies?
I would like to have something that's actually more of a final document that's
Okay.
being drafted. I think we kind of already identified what we believe might be some of, I know the document currently, I don't know it intimately, it's substantial, but I think some of those things are addressed. We just want to make sure that there's, going forward, that there's something. So I'd like to see something drafted, and I said, like, even if it's an amendment to the existing reciprocal easement agreement, it'd be fine. But I'd like to see something in kind of a draft form of what those changes or where the document addresses these issues.
Anybody else? 'Cause we have been pretty clear that once we change the envelope of the building is what triggers the need for the circulation plan and easements to be updated. And, you know, you mentioned some of the outlots, those outlots were developed, you're right, but the only thing they really may be affected was the parking. They didn't change the flow of traffic, they didn't change the driveways, the entrances, or any of the traffic flows. Once we change the envelope of the building, it does change the flow of the traffic in front of that building. It changes the fire lane. And we're at risk of some of those being, made obsolete or eliminated altogether at some point if we just didn't have a plan in place before we continue with that. So I think we have, John, just make sure you're very clear with the applicant what we need.
Yep.
And if they can get something back here in December, I don't think that we're putting that great of a burden in getting it approved at the December meeting, more than likely.
Just have a couple items just want to mention, just to know, we were allowing for some of that outlot development to occur, but we had to kind of stop it at some point, because if we were to allow that to continue, it starts to get really problematic in terms to addressing it. And we are very supportive of the reuse and repurpose of the entire Cherryland Center, and we appreciate all the investments that are being made. We want to make sure that as it goes forward, we know that there are changes in ownership, there are changes in uses and so forth. And while we see it as it is today, we know that, even from a few years from now, it's going to look a lot different. And so we want to make sure that there is some of these mechanisms, and we want to make sure that these investments are protected. There's a lot of money that's already been invested to date on that site, and we want to make sure that it's done in a way that makes for continued quality development and investment on there, and this is one of the vehicles that we have to do that. The other thing I just wanted to mention, so Eric mentioned about the two brothers' proposal. Would you be comfortable having that on the agenda for the next meeting, or would you like to pause that until we get this completely resolved?
I would comment, but I won't be here.
Okay. That's true.
I mean, my thought is a formality, if we have the things that we're expecting with regard to the update of the master plan, and they're reviewed and approved, then the condition's been met, and we can review the application for two brothers. But if the master plan's not sufficient, then the two continue to roll forward, and I for one wouldn't have a problem if we're able to approve the master plan and start the review in the same meeting. But we can't start the review until, because of the condition that's been put in place and the applicants have all been aware of. So I would think it would be okay to have the application on the agenda, recognizing that if we're not able to approve the master plan, then it gets tabled. Anybody?
I agree.
I couldn't have said it better myself, but just make sure the Two Brothers is item B and that the master plan is item A. All right, just make sure, get them in the right order. So,
Contingent, yeah.
Okay,
I
that's
think
fair
that's
enough.
fair.
Yep.
Okay. Sound all right?
I'm okay with that.
Okay.
I see
I still think
affirmative
we
head
do need a
nodding from
motion
the
to
others.
table the thing tonight, as recommended, and then we'll deal with it in December, or you guys will deal
We
with
need
it.
to tweak the language that was in the draft motion for tabling.
I don't think so. I think that, I mean, I have the added understanding and direction from the planning commission on how to proceed in terms of placing these on the agenda, so I think how that motion is presented there is sufficient.
I'll make the motion that application SBR 2024-14 submitted by Trailland Center LLC for an updated comprehensive development plan for the Trailland Center be tabled, subject to the providing the following information 1 through 2 as indicated in PD 2024-98.
Support.
The motion made and supported that application SPR 2024-14 be tabled. And further, I would say brought back for the regular scheduled meeting in December. Is that all right to add that, Joe? Okay,
Sure, I'm fine with that.
all right. Any further discussion on that motion? If none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Thanks, guys. In December. All right. Item 7B, Planning Department Report 2024-4-99, excuse me, Copper Ridge PUD Major Amendment Introduction. John, you gonna kick us off on this one, or? Steve?
Yes, so the Copper Ridge PUD was a development that was originally approved back in 2000. It's a mixed-use development that has surgery center, medical clinics, offices, commercial establishments, single and multifamily residential. Most of the site, as you're probably aware, has been built out. There are still some remaining sites. There are basically 4 unbuilt locations that they are requesting to be adjusted in terms of the land use. When you look at that site, the form is pretty much all in place. The buildings are, for the most part, built. Parking lots established, roadways and so forth are all in place. And these, what they are looking to do is to adjust the land uses that are permitted in the remaining unbuilt spots. And so they're trying to have some greater flexibility of uses. In this case, I think the form does dictate what uses are appropriate there. So if you look at their exhibit sheet, you'll see there's one that's an unbuilt area that's up by the Copper Ridge Retail Marketplace. So this is an area that originally was going to be, I think, mostly retail, but they're looking at the flexibility of allowing whether it's office, commercial, or residential. There are 2 foundations that are installed over kind of on the west side of the surgery center. Those are locations 3 and 4. Those were going to be office, but they're looking at those to be office, commercial, or residential. They've talked about, met with staff previously about some uses that could be supplemental and supportive of the surgery center. For instance, if they had an overnight stay location for patients and so forth that were visiting the surgery center. And then there's the last one is another unbuilt area, that's area number 10. Again, having some of the flexibility to allow for some of the mixed uses. I think this is appropriate in knowing that the site is probably 90% built out, and that, again, the form is going to probably dictate the type of uses that could go in here. And most of these would be complementary to that. We really see, if you were to look at these as perhaps residential, the impact of that kind of works out fairly well, because those are typically similar to office. It's just that they're different in terms of demand, where they're, overnight parking versus daytime parking. The intensity is actually quite a little bit less than office. You tend to have a lot more visitors to office workers and so forth, where residential is a little bit more limited. So they would be looking at potentially restoring some of the residential units that were taken out originally. There was a reduction of 90, let me see.
Yeah, 90.
Yeah, it was 90. So it basically would restore at least up to that number. So the density doesn't necessarily, in terms of number of units, doesn't necessarily increase at all from what was originally approved back in the PUD in 2000. So this just gives them some flexibility to meet market demands and interest in terms of what can potentially be built on that site. So we've recommended, based on what the ordinance has in terms of the use and the configuration of that, would be a major amendment. So that does require a process where we would go a major amendment to the PUD, where it's an introduction, public hearing, and findings of fact and recommendation from the Planning Commission, and then go to the town board, where it'd be introduction, public hearing, and action by the town board to amend the PUD. I think one thing this really does also offer us is PUDs they change over time, especially this one's been in place for about 25 years. This gives us a really good baseline going forward and gives them some of the flexibility that they need to do their development.
Does the applicant want to make any comments or questions? Or I don't know that it's necessary, but if you'd like to come up and.
Sarah Keever with Northview 22, representing the applicant, Copper Ridge, and some of the team is with us here this evening. I can't really add much more than what John made clear. We're certainly welcome, here to answer any questions. I think an important part of this is that the original PUD did have the higher density for residential units. Over time, that was reduced in the two residential sections that were there. And so this is an attempt, because as we see, the demand for residential uses is certainly there. Maybe some of the demand for professional offices is less. This is an opportunity to bring residential back to the original PUD as it was proposed. And with that, if you have any questions, we'd be happy to answer.
Anybody have any questions for the applicant? Go ahead, John.
It looks like what you're proposing is to have a lot of flexibility in these 4 sites, and maybe it'll be office, maybe it'll be commercial, maybe it'll be residential. And I can appreciate wanting that flexibility, and for 3 out of the 4 of them, I don't have any issue at all. The building R4 and buildings 2 and 3. Building 10, though, is right up against where some residential condos are already existing. And what might be appropriate there, I think we will need to look very carefully at whether that's compatible with the adjoining existing residential stuff to the west, whereas most of the other stuff you're talking about in the other 3 sites, I don't see a problem with any of your proposed uses fitting in on those 3 places.
Okay.
So, John, are you thinking that perhaps that the commercial on that site 10 offers, or is not a good idea relative to the adjacent residential?
I'd be a little more concerned, I guess. I'm not necessarily saying it would be inappropriate, but it's right next to residential. So I think we've got to be a little more cautious about what goes there as opposed to what goes into the other 3 sites that are pretty well separated from the other residential stuff, and whether it's office, retail, or residential, I don't think would negatively impact anything that's immediately surrounding the other 3 sites. That one I'd be more cautious about. I'd love to hear you say you're gonna put single-family houses there, but if you got something else in mind, I'll listen, but those neighbors might have some things to say about that too.
Definitely, I would agree that that one's worth some more discussion.
Well, it sounds like staff thinks the application is pretty complete. We're ready to rock and roll, get a public hearing going.
Yeah, so just so you know that when this does happen, and this is amended, that when they come back for the individual plans, that we require an administrative site plan review, so we just know what was established there. We did that most recently for building number 7, which is now where West Front Primary Care is. So that would just be administratively done. So, but on that one where you just mentioned that area 10, maybe it could just be a breakdown a little bit more on that one in terms of the types of uses.
I'd like to see that, and I suspect the neighbors would probably feel more comfortable if they saw that too.
Sure.
John, I guess I'd be interested in staff's statement of what, I think residential's pretty obvious to me. Obviously, there's already office here, so the range of use in that expansion or change or reversion to the original PUD is obvious, but the addition of the commercial, I'd be curious to know what is the range of uses under commercial that could be presented by the applicant in the future, so that we have an idea of, what does that expansion mean?
Yeah, I mean, I could see something like, let's say, for instance, a hotel, which really isn't, I mean, it's a commercial use, but it's not necessarily something that could be, I mean, it's kind of essentially similar to an apartment if it's intensity, like an apartment building or something like that. So maybe a breakdown of those and maybe some examples, give it some direction so that in the future, whatever, still gives them flexibility, but maybe gives a little bit assurances that it's something that's going to be compatible to the residential to the west of there.
In particular to building 10, you believe? Okay.
Yeah.
I think that's reasonable.
Actually, I would be
Right then.
curious about commercial, being because there's the commercial and the Copper Ridge Marketplace area,
Correct.
but I would be curious about what commercial would go adjacent to office buildings, or could be presented under the term commercial within the PUD. Does that making sense?
Wouldn't we refer simply to what is allowed? Are you just saying itemize what is allowed under the ordinance under what
Right.
commercial says?
Right.
And
Yeah, and I don't know if
same
that-
with residential?
Yeah, and I don't know if that needs to come from the applicant or just come from staff, but
Okay,
I just
that's what
was
I'm
looking for
wondering.
a summary of, if we allow commercial, what does that mean?
Well, I think I mean, I guess that's something we can have a conversation of, but really the PUD creates the ability to be extremely flexible. So I mean, it might be I would think it would be, they are obviously looking at a certain character and understanding of the different uses there to make sure that the mix is good and doesn't become problematic to what they're doing. So I think it's really kind of up to them to maybe kind of give us some ideas that what they would be comfortable with, and then we can,
I think we can do that to a certain extent, but I think you made a very good point earlier, is that the form is going to dictate what is going to go here. Maybe if we pull out the ordinance, and I don't know what the ordinance says for commercial, but maybe car wash is in there. Car wash isn't going to fit in this, right? The form isn't there. There isn't that ability. So a lot of what would go in here is already, and again, the footprint has to remain the same. The ability for parking is remaining the same. So it's not opening up Pandora's box unlimited. You are restricted to what is already existing, what's already approved, and again, the form that's already there. So we can kind of give you some examples maybe, but again, I think we have already established.
and
By
that
the
would be
PUD.
fine. I think we would just need something to illustrate it. And so while we understand that most likely you're not going to put a car wash next to the surgery center, it's just helpful for whoever at some point does that review, what fits in there. So I think it's in a range. So we do that all the time. I mean, we have uses that come in and we look at, this is the commercial zoning district. Where does it fit in? What uses are compatible to that? So I think it's really to kind of give some illustration to that as to what we mean, because that's a very broad term in terms of commercial can be, so.
And I guess to just reiterate what I'm looking for, I just don't want this body to be surprised 4 years down the road when we thought, oh, no, I mean, I never underestimate the ingenuity of somebody to say, by golly, it's commercial, and I think there needs to be a car wash in this development, and 4 years from now, here we are reviewing a car wash. I don't want surprises. That's all. I mean, anything that just kind of clarifies what commercial means, you know, I think
I think we've got a, I can't remember the specific development, but I'm recalling in at least one PUD where there was a mix of uses, and there was gonna be some kind of commercial use. There were some examples given of the sorts, maybe like 10 things that could conceivably go in there, a coffee shop or a dentist office or whatever. But the full range of everything that's under the umbrella of commercial, some of those things might not be appropriate there. So if we sort of had a list of the sorts of commercials that are broad enough to not tie your hands, but also don't open the door to something that would be disastrous in that area, that's a good solution for everybody.
that was Zimmerman and North Long Way.
I was thinking it was up there
Brookfield
somewhere.
Commons,
Yeah.
Brookside Commons, yeah.
Something like that.
Brookside Commons, yeah.
Also came up in Beta.
And Beta.
So maybe you guys could give some thoughts to
Beta development.
pick 5 or 10 or 20 commercial things that you might think of could conceivably go there. And if we think those all make sense, then super.
I'm gonna step aside.
Dennis Fedorenchuk, Traverse City. I'm one of the partners. And John, I think to satisfy your request and that of Chris, in the master deed already, there is a list of commercial uses that are acceptable.
Perfect.
And we're here just to hopefully add the component for residential as a possibility.
Cool.
If you have any other questions.
That's great. Thanks,
Thank you.
Sally.
Thank you.
That would be great for staff to maybe refresh us by the time we're
Yeah.
doing this next.
That would be-
What are those uses that are in that deed that
If we get a
haven't
copy of
seen
that,
in
we can
Say that
include
was
that
news to me.
section of it.
years?
That was
Yep.
news to me, so we will get that master deed, and I will get that to
Yeah.
John and
Thank you.
Steve.
Yeah,
All right.
sounds good.
All right.
Perfect.
Outside of that, are there any other questions about this one?
I'll make a motion that application SUP 2000-08-0 submitted by Sarah Keever on behalf of Copper Ridge LLC for a special use permit amendment to the Copper Ridge Plan Unit Development be accepted and scheduled for a public hearing at the regular Planning Commission meeting on December 11th, 2024.
Support.
Motion made, supported, that application SUP 2000-08-0 will be accepted and scheduled for public hearing on December 11th, 2024. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. See you in December. All right, item C, Planning Department Report 2024-100, Cherryland Center 24/7 Golf, a site plan review. John or Steve, which one has this one?
Yeah, I'll be covering this one. Back to Cherryland, here we go. So this is in the Traverse City Curling Center building, the former location of Kmart. This is for a portion of it on the interior of roughly 3,749 square feet for what we would classify as an indoor entertainment center. So it's for the 24/7 golf location here, and it's from my understanding that this would be a place where people could go in and practice golf using screens, virtual screens and so forth that they hit into and so forth. And so this is a relatively minor part to that site, but continues to fill out that building in terms of the footprint of it. In terms of our evaluation, this is located at the front of the building, kind of near the main entrance to the building, or what was the main entrance to the building when it was Kmart in operation. So this fills it out. That when we looked at based on the size and the demand for parking, for instance, this I think had 6 parking spaces in terms of its demand. In terms of what it would be required, a minimum of 6, a maximum of 12. The only thing that we really looked at is in terms of any other requirements would be bicycle parking spaces, which need to be provided. When we looked at the curling center, and if you recall, also with the Philharmonic, that there was some deferrals that were done on the sidewalk improvements and the landscaping requirements that were for that particular site. So those are still valid up until next year, May of 2025. So we've kind of done that for that particular site and defer those. And the owners are aware of those requirements and are already looking at ways that they need to meet those requirements on the site. But for the time being, that we felt that this was appropriate as presented.
All right, anybody have any questions for staff, comments?
Is there some automatic trigger mechanism with, not this project, but the owners of the entire building, that they've got to do something by May 11th?
Yeah, I mean, they're aware of it, and we'll be in contact with them come the springtime. They've already been working on that. I know that Bob has looked at that site, trying to figure out where that sidewalk, we've had that sidewalk going from, Wendy's and in front of Starbucks, it's going up there, and there's gonna have to be that extension, finding a route all the way up to the north end of that. So they've already been looking at that, as well as sidewalks to get back towards where TC Philharmonic is at and so forth, so they're aware of it. Some of the stuff they don't have to do on this part of the building, some of that's already in place. There isn't really a need to make any changes, but they are aware of that.
Anybody else? Certainly you've got curling and you've got car racing and now golf, and there's a lot of recreational uses that certainly seems like it's compatible, so.
So you want a motion?
Sure.
I'm sorry, I can.
Go ahead.
I'm just curious, oh, I see. There's the vestibule. This is the entrance, this is how this. So I guess where's the main entry into this? Where is it, how do you get into this portion of the building?
So there's a corridor that runs, there's kind of two corridors. There's one that runs kind of between the building and the front, and the, let me see which would be a good one to look at.
I think if you look at plan, page 1.1, is that what you're looking at?
This one?
You see a
That
doorway.
one, yeah, that one would be
Corridor.
fine. So you see the unit A2,
And down toward the bottom, you see an entryway in, I guess would be the northwest corner of what's going to be the
Okay, I
golf
see.
center. I'm assuming that's the entryway. It's a door off the corridor into the golf center.
So it's like an,
It's the only doorway I see.
yeah.
yeah, because the other one I think is for emergency, I think it's for exit, so it's for fire. There's like that one that
page you
runs
looking at?
kind of east-west. The one that they're gonna be getting into would be the one running north-south.
Okay. So then there remains a big future tenant space
Yep.
in the middle, and then there are future tenant spaces that front the parking lot to the south.
There's kind of one between,
Oh, I see. There it is. Well, that's 1 point.
well, there's one between 24/7 Golf and the curling center, between that and the TC Philharmonic. And then is there one to
There it
the,
is.
then there's one kind of to the west, or excuse me, to the east of there, right? Which was kind of where the old automotive service area was. Kind of to the, between that and the commercial buildings that are fronting that building. Basically, that unit A1
Right.
is available.
Unit A, okay, Unit A1's still available, then there's an existing mercantile that's still available.
Yeah, that's different ownership, but it looks like it's part of the same building, but it's
Oh, okay.
not.
It's different, okay.
Yeah. And then there's to the other side, Steve, yeah, if you just scroll,
this way?
yeah, that one
Yeah.
right there, future tenant space.
There, okay.
Two. and
Yeah.
then There, go to this one.
Okay, I'm good. I was just looking for some more
A
understanding.
corridor
Thank you.
across the, what would be the south side too? Is that a corridor right out, for existing, existing service exit corridor? So
Yeah,
there
that's
would be
like
an
a-
entrance there.
It's there, but that's for emergency
Okay.
fire exit required by building code.
All right, so the entrance would be that corridor that runs down along the side.
Right.
So what is the what would be, not that it matters for this applicant, but where would the entrance be for unit A1? Where would that be? Outside?
Yeah.
On the outside, okay. Gotcha. All right.
Sorry, Molly, if you wanted to go ahead and
Sure,
make a motion.
I'll make the motion. I'll make the motion that application SPR 2024-12 submitted by Kevin Query on behalf of 24/7 Golf to construct an indoor entertainment center on parcel 05-014-04921 be approved, subject to the following conditions, 1 through 4, as indicated in Planning Department Report 2024-100.
Support. All right. Motion made and supported that SPR 2024-12 be approved, subject to conditions 1 through 4 in Planning Department Report 2024-100. Any further discussion on that motion? Is that adequate, John? Okay. All right. If there is none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Moving right along. We have item 7D, which is Planning Department Report 2024-101, Cherryland Humane Society SUP Major Amendment Introduction. Who's handling that one?
I
All right,
will
Steve.
give us an overview. So this is over on the end of Alberg Drive, kind of beyond the Road Commission's property. If you go through the light at Lafreniere, more up the hill from the corner of Hammond and Keystone, but the only access is off of Alberg Drive, which is came into play in terms of actually reviewing this application when it started. This was actually submitted a few months ago to the planning department, and for any application, whether it's a special use permit amendment, administrative site plan review, any application, staff starts with a completeness review. So we review, sometimes we'll get into like specific things of the ordinance, but part of it, sometimes it's just, do you have all the pieces in place to even consider it a complete application to start bringing it in front of the planning commission. So there was an issue that came up in terms of actually defining the yards, because their access is from this Alberg Drive, which sort of ends right at their property. They have a long border along Hammond, but they don't have any access, nor could they get access to Hammond Road. So actually determining which is the front yard, which is the side yard, which is the rear yard, took some time to determine and came into play because there are different numbers for those setbacks, and their existing building and some of their proposed addition butts up right to some of those. So what they actually worked on over the last couple months was doing an easement to extend Alberg Drive, at least as an easement, into their property to provide enough frontage they could call that part of it the front, which is essentially where the front entrance of the building faces. So that has been recorded, so that is now in place. But what they're proposing is some building additions to the existing Humane Society building. And most of the report goes through the other items of the zoning ordinance. In terms of a draft action, we noted that there were a few items to be addressed, and we were of the opinion that it would make sense to address those before public hearing is set. The applicant's also here if they would like to address some of those right now. some of them are specifically to clean up the site plan a little bit in terms of like responding to some of the other requirements. But one in particular that popped up was, and I might actually pull up the site plan here if you don't mind. It is. This has come up a couple times in the review, and I wanted to notate it, and if the applicant's able to comment on it. But there is the building setback line. I don't know why these yellow boxes keep going up, but the setback line, there's a portion of the proposed addition, everything in yellow is a proposed addition, that goes over the setback line. I wanted to know if the applicant could address that.
So Kyle Richter with RCI. I'm representing the Cherryland Humane Society. Bill Crane couldn't be here tonight.
Okay.
Obviously, site plan pertains to him. But if you refer to sheet C2
Okay.
or A2.2, those are both drafting errors on Bill's behalf, and that was in haste because he was trying to get this put together for this meeting.
Okay.
The building actually butts up to the 20-foot setback. If you see there,
Here's the next page is C2.2.
it's not,
Okay.
I don't understand how it got on there. And then if you go to A2.2, it's clearly defined on the architectural drawings.
Okay. Here's probably after what he put together. Here's.
Because Jessica put it together and then Bill put it together off of.
We did only do the site plan. We didn't put all the architectural drawings in this
Okay.
packet, but if it was on there as well. But if he's got it on one.
I have copies of it if anybody
Yeah.
would like to look at it either.
Yeah. I think I have the digital copy of all the architectural ones. But okay, so this was one of them, and probably I was looking at it because there's landscape plan. There is, which one's this? Is this 2.2?
That is the drainage plan.
Drainage plan.
But it represents the easement on there and
Okay.
most of the
Easements on
requirements
there.
on the site plan.
Okay, so there it's not showing yet. Okay, was that originally proposed as like an
That's-
overhang or?
It was, it was never, what I think it was is off of the original design where there was a walkway out there. And Bill must have never deleted it off of his drawing.
All right. Thank you for the explanation. I probably stayed on that one because this was the site plan. I looked at that more than the drainage plan.
Well, and I saw it when I was putting this together this evening.
Yeah.
I was
Okay.
kind of
Okay.
bummed about that.
Okay, all right, so if that's just an error, I think that, thank you for bringing that to our attention. So some of the others, this is, sometimes I would say in terms of like preparing a site plan is sometimes you just need the quality control.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, so, I guess it's up to Planning Commission. Also, if you have any questions.
We could go through this list of items right here.
Right.
I feel that most of them are, it doesn't affect the general intent of the project. They may just be details that need to be clarified. But while we're here, I could go through those items. That way the commission understood the intent of the project and what is to be completed.
If Planning Commissioners would like to, you can get that information.
I have, so item 2.
Okay.
I brought cut sheets, if anybody would like to see the cut sheets of the light. It's actually shown on SE 2.1 as well. It's a typical parking lot light that's found in majority of parking lots in Garfield Township.
It would be probably on this one?
SE 2.1, so it'd be
This one?
one page, yes, correct.
Well,
It
there
should be
the
in the
building also shows
yeah.
there as well.
Lower left-hand corner of the page, there is the unit. The color temperature of that unit would be 3,000 K.
Okay, is that listed somewhere in here?
It's not, but I feel that in the general permitting process that could be,
Yeah.
I have the submittal for it, I could.
Yeah, typically the cut sheets
Provide-
are just like, the kind of like factory information or that kind of stuff, which we don't look at all of the details of it, but the color temperature is one that comes up a lot. and it usually shows how it's shielded. So as long as they're shielded out like that, looks like it's shielded down, so.
Yes, correct.
But yeah, I think that's the only other information we would need, so. Okay.
The landscaping, obviously, we can address that. I went back, there's the question about the 6 trees along the east lot line. I actually looked up the original construction drawings for the project that was approved when the Cherry Land Humane Society was originally built. All of that landscaping is still intact from the original special use permit. Those 6 trees in question are white pine. And they're mature trees at this point in time. They're shown on the original site plan.
Partially because that table that's referenced in there, for larger ones, you get like more per tree credit. So if you are not filling in as much of the others, you can use that, but just we need to know what they are and like how big, usually like a caliper size.
They're probably a 6-inch caliper by now, I'd imagine. They're a pretty good-sized tree that's there.
So if someone
they're,
can,
what, 18 years old at this point, so they're a well-established mature tree.
Which is, because we know that every time we review landscaping plans, like some of them are going to make to full maturity, and that's why those get larger credit when you are adding on to that if you do an amendment in the future. We want to definitely preserve and count the mature trees. So, so that's that.
The landscaping plan needs to be updated to identify the correct required buffer. Obviously, I can have Bill Crane do that. I know we had the type B at the east lot line and the type D at the north lot line. So just want to clarify what you'd like to see.
It would be, I think it would be earlier in this report. If I may, don't know specifically if I noted it. Might actually be it might be on the east. On the side, which would be a type C. I believe that is the one I was referring to,
So
but we can double check that.
East should be a type C. Just make a note of that. We can have that adjusted, no problem. The note about the new landscaping not to be placed in the easement.
That'd be this.
We can move that. That's obviously no problem. It's more or less semantics at this time. We can reflect it. We can have Bill Crane adjust that, change that. Again, obviously, we were pretty excited to get the easement at this point in time so we could get it in front of the commission. So
absolutely,
Bill changed some things in a hurry.
Same with the scale.
The scale, we can have them correct the scale.
Yeah, when they're at scale, I use the architectural scale to measure everything out. So just small thing that I noted.
Oh yeah, absolutely, and clerical issues on Bill's part, and we'll have all those corrected. Traffic generation for the remainder of the building area needs to be accounted for, and additional parking may need to be provided. So this addition, correct me if I'm wrong, Bruce, won't necessarily generate any more outside traffic to the building. It's actually trying to just make some space to separate the cats from the dogs and some more room for them because they're at capacity. They need some more space. There's not going to be any more staff on site generally taking up parking spaces.
All right, so it's just added indoor space for that
added indoor space, but the site plan does have an additional 6 parking spaces to it from what was originally approved. And the parking spaces meet the square footage of the building for the use group. So I don't, there's not to be, obviously you have the meeting room. There may be days where you have a bigger group, but it isn't, the parking spaces as it is aren't full now, so. Snow storage will be accessed. Obviously, we have that proposed dumpster enclosure off to the west of the building. The intent is that the snow would be pushed down into that retention pond with a loader or a truck or.
So through
that area, off the end of those parking
off
spaces.
the end of the parking space?
Yep.
Okay,
Yep.
okay.
Correct. They're not gonna be
Yeah.
plowing snow when there's traffic in the parking lot.
Yeah.
So it'd be an early morning, they come in,
Yeah.
the snow will be consolidated over to that corner and pushed in that retention pond.
Okay. I just noted from a design perspective, I was like, all right, I'm seeing where the drive is and the dumpster is right where, between that and the snow storage.
In which that dumpster was moved to that location for an ease of truck access to.
Just don't push
get
the
it-
snow in front of the
Yeah,
ground.
exactly.
Yeah.
I guess I'm a little skeptical of the functionality of that. I mean, the greater mass of, it's like, the snow storage area is like a triangle, and the narrowest spot is, and there's a side slope, so you got the parking, you're gonna push the snow around the dumpster, across the parking, and then there's a slope. Just seems like maybe that needs to be revisited.
Well,
And maybe-
that piece of property is fairly large. And at this point in time, I believe the majority of the snow was pushed probably to the west of where that existing parking lot was. Now we're putting a parking lot. They still own to the west there.
Yeah, but that's an uphill slope, too. I mean, I'm not questioning that you have enough area to satisfy the snow removal requirement. It's just the logistics of, maybe, talk to your snowplow guys or and have them affirm that, oh, yeah, we can do that. But again, slope, dumpster, parking, and they're pushing the snow all the way and trying to, doesn't seem like it would work.
So, what are the next, you recommended we table, he's indicating these are a lot of easy fixes. What are the next steps in a major amendment here?
Next steps would be yeah, he did address, or at least spoke to, pretty much all of these.
The dumpster closure is also.
That was the
shown
last one on there,
A
yeah.
6.2 as well, because it is a masonry structure. So that's shown in a wall section for construction details for the masonry.
Oh, so it was in the architectural, okay. I can check that for that. So,
Is this, just remind me, is next a public hearing?
next would be a public hearing, so since he's able to speak to it, you could choose to accept the application and schedule a public hearing.
When would you have to have a complete application from him and be satisfied to get, how far are we? We're December 11th, we're
Yeah.
5 weeks away, right?
I mean, yeah, we would be preparing the application the week before. I think, speaking to it, at least we understand what it's doing, but obviously we would like it in writing so it gets in your packet.
Well, I'm
as
just
that-
saying, if
yeah.
the applicant,
Yeah.
if the applicant feels he can get all the necessary information to staff in
Mhm.
time for the December 11th meeting,
Yeah.
and you're satisfied with that, I don't have a problem with moving it to public hearing if you think we can have everything needed.
I think that Monday, the week of preparing the package, would be the Monday the 2nd at the very latest. We'd be reviewing everything at that point. Any earlier would be better, but if you can get it by then, addressing those things on an updated set or on the couple that I can pull from the architectural that addresses a couple of those things. But
We
I
have
think
a
if
little
that's
extra
feasible,
time because we moved this meeting back, we've got 5 weeks.
we do have some time. So
Is
yeah.
everybody comfortable with doing that
Yeah.
based on what discussion
Yep.
tonight?
Okay.
As long as you get him what he
Absolutely, we
needs.
we can turn that around fairly quickly.
Yeah. Yeah. I would still suggest if anyone makes a motion on it to still include, like, subject to applicant addressing the following items.
1 through 9, yeah.
Since they're still in writing, and some of them we now know where they are, and I can pull them up.
But
But
he
yeah,
still needs to address them before
Yeah.
the applicant could be, or the application.
some of which were discussed in the, yeah, exactly. So, but
I'll make the motion that application SUP 2001-05-A for a special use permit for the expansion of the existing Trailland Humane Society facility at 1750 Alberg Drive be tabled to allow the applicant to to
Nope.
address, I'm
No,
sorry.
Set for public hearing.
Set for public hearing. Thank you.
Support.
To allow the applicant to address the following, no, and too hasty.
Would you like us to write out a motion?
No, I think I
Okay.
can get it here. I was just hasty to make the motion.
That's all right.
Be set for public hearing
December 11th.
for December 11th. And that the applicant shall address the following items 1 through 9 as listed in Planning Department Report 2024-101.
Support.
All right. Is that good enough, Steve?
I think that gets
All
the
right.
gist of it, yes.
That motion made and supported to schedule SUP 2001-05-A, the special use permit for the Cherry Lane Humane Society, schedule a public hearing on December 11th, 2024, once the applicant makes sure he addresses items 1 through 9 in Planning Department Report 2024-101. Any further discussion on that motion? Hearing none, all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carried.
Thank you very much.
Opposed? None.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right. Okay, that takes us to our,
At the end of the meeting, the chair will sign it, yes.
next item is public comment. This is our second and final public comment this evening. So if you do want to make public comment, please state your name and address for the record, please.
Hi, I'm Jan Freeman. I live at 4284 Eaglevale, which is right above the Copper Ridge. I also represent the association, the Homeowner Association. I'm president of the association. First of all, I want to thank you for the work you all do in this committee. Just a little bit on an association level. We should be praying for you every night, so thank you much for your work. We do want to recognize that the association members, co-owners as we call them, are very interested in the project that is occurring down below us in the Copper Ridge area. We love having our neighbors there. Don't get us wrong, we're not opposed to it, but we are in need of additional information. And I was wondering if staff could share your package of information to me, and then I will get it to all of our members. I think that will take care of a lot of their concerns that I have heard over the course of the last month. In particular, things like height of buildings going up, because the topography of the area is difficult in their area. We have had trespassers, in particular skateboarders, utilizing the hills of that area, and we're very fearful about the danger that poses to young people in that area. We're also very concerned about the traffic and getting out on Barnes and then going, out to Silver Lake Road. So there's a variety of interest that we have. So if I could make a plea to staff, if they could send that to me, then I'll get it to the members, and I hope then your public comment in December will go more rapidly and a more civil pace for you. So that's our public comment. So again, thank you for the work you do for all of us.
On that note, Steve, all those residents probably noticed of the public hearing.
Yeah, they're gonna be,
They might
they will
listen
be
in.
getting a notice on the public hearing. We'll have to do the whole PUD and then
Right.
300 feet around it.
Yeah,
It's gonna be a
It'll be
substantial
substantial.
notice.
PUD will be noticed of the public hearing.
Yeah, because they're in the PUDs, so they
Yeah.
should, yeah.
So all those homeowners will be notified,
Good.
as well as any property owners within 300 feet on the perimeter of Copper Ridge.
Okay, great. Thank
Yeah,
you.
yeah, we can get information too if you want to.
Then I could,
Yeah.
Yeah.
Our
These packets are public,
They're
yep.
posted online.
Yeah,
They're posted
You
online.
can get this packet right now on our website, on
I'll
the
do that
township.
link then, okay.
Yeah.
How many days in advance of the meeting are those packets typically posted on the website?
It's usually the week of, so it would, like, the packet usually, like, today's meeting would have been posted on Monday. But we-
If I could make a request, if you can do that quicker, we have residents, of course, up there that have summer winter homes not in our wonderful snow area. So I would like to get that to them so they have a chance to review it, because some of those people are the people that are very concerned about that, especially the activities that might propose. We also have a rumor of buses coming in to pick up some of the families, and that's upsetting some of the neighbors. So I don't know if that's true. It probably isn't, but we'd like to squash as many rumors and give them the correct information versus rumor information. So thank you very much for doing that.
If you could just email us, that would be helpful.
I will. I'll be happy to do that.
Yeah.
If I could make a suggestion, if there's any way you can communicate with the lady that was here before that represents the developer and maybe share concerns, and the more the two groups can work stuff out beforehand, there may be nothing to talk about at the public hearing.
There may not be, and so I don't have her contact information, but Steve,
We can,
if you
yep,
could give
we
that
can
to
connect
us.
you. Yep.
Yep, we can
Perfect.
collect those questions and get them answered,
That'd be
so.
great.
The other thing too is to remember that there is as they mentioned, a master deed document. So that's nothing that we regulate. That's what they self-regulate in terms of that development. So that is another, beyond the plan unit development, which we approved. That's a kind of a self-imposed thing in there.
Yeah.
And we have been asking for that for the last several years and have not been able to get our hands on that.
Okay.
So that's another issue that we've been trying to overcome.
Okay.
John, that's a recorded document that would be
It should be
available from-
recorded.
So-
Yeah.
Sometimes they're not always, but it should be recorded with the county.
With the
registrar.
county, and I've had some difficulty trying to get that from the county.
Okay.
Yeah.
We
Part
can
of this application.
We'll be
yeah.
getting it,
ask them
yeah.
for it. So
Yep,
can-
we have, yep.
Get it. When I
Okay.
drop something.
Yeah, it's a
yeah.
public document, so.
Oh, yeah, I'm always throwing stuff around, so. Thank you.
All right, thank you.
All right. Any other public comment? I don't see anybody else coming for public comment. So we'll close that. Other business, anything other business to come before the board?
Not at this time.
All right.
Can I ask one quick question?
Yeah.
I noticed in our minutes from the last meeting that there was maybe going to be something tonight about the Beta Housing Commission PUD amendment,
And they never
They
submitted.
did not submit.
so there's nothing to talk
Yep.
about.
Okay.
Yep.
I don't see anything items for the next agenda, but I know we had a couple of them tonight.
So there'll be a couple public hearings. as we-
Yeah, so basically, what you'll have is probably something from Tower North. We'll get an update on High Tops, the comprehensive development plan for Cherryland Center. You'll have a public hearing on Copper Ridge PUD major amendment and a public hearing on the Cherryland Humane Society major amendment as well.
We filled that up quickly, so. Before we move on to adjournment, I would just like to say thank you to all of you for your service on this board. And I'm not leaving anywhere, but I won't be on this board. I'll just be meeting on Tuesday nights instead of on Wednesdays. So, heads up to Chris, you'll be chairing the next meeting in December, because I will be off as of November 20th. And be thinking about your leadership going into 2024. You'll be electing new officers, and obviously I won't be here. So, and we'll do our best at the town board level to get the opening filled up right away. Get you back to 7 as soon as we can. So, great board. It's been John's been a great mentor. I always lean on John, and he's taught me well over the years. It's been a long time. I hope he doesn't go anywhere anytime soon. So. It's been a great board. We've done a lot of nice things. It's been great. Thank you all. So,
Thank you, Joe. Good work.
yeah. See how it goes.
It's been a pleasure for us too.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you'll make a fine supervisor.
I hope so. Molly said she'd keep me in line. She got Congratulations, Molly. Top vote getter of all the trustees last night. So nice job. Nice job. So, all right. Anything else for the good of the order?
I'll make a motion, we